Hello and welcome to the Witcher chapter by chapter book review, where I'll go through a summary of what happened in the latest chapter and then give my detailed thoughts on it. Today I'll be discussing chapter 5 from Time of Contempt. So this chapter is a little bit of a cool off time from the previous chapter and all of the chaos that took place there. We learn a lot. So this is a great chapter to get a good follow-up on a lot of the things that happened in the last chapter, but it's definitely not as chaotic as the last one, which is nice because as enjoyable as it was to read the last chapter, it is definitely a good thing to be able to feel like we can take a breather from it. Like, you don't want chaos after chaos. Well, maybe you do, but I appreciated that this was a more calm, or all the things that happened here were a lot more calm than the previous one. So speaking of the previous chapter, as always, I'll give you the recap on that, and then we'll go right into the summary of chapter 5. So, recap. Philippa and other North supporting mages initiated a coup on Thanedd to catch the members of the Brotherhood who've been in cahoots with Nilfgaard. Disarray removes the magic blockade in Garstang Palace, leading to all hell breaking loose when Cahir, Rience, and Scoia'tael attack the opposing side. After being brought to Garstang by Yennefer, Ciri needs to make a run for it. She manages to wound Cahir and escape into Tor Lara. Vigilforts, in pursuit of Ciri, beats Geralt, who's trying to protect Ciri, and then Tissaia helps Triss portal a gravely wounded Geralt to Brokilon. Alright, here's the summary of chapter 5. Dandelion miraculously makes his way into Brokilon Forest to find Geralt. He updates his friend on the fallout of Aedirn and Lyria's aggression against Nilfgaard and Dol Angra and the Thanedd coup. Nilfgaard invaded Aedirn and Lyria, capturing major cities, killing many civilians, forcing people into slavery, and leaving scorched earth behind, while all of the northern rulers left the countries to their fate. Foltest of Temeria agreed to a truce with Nilfgaard. Henselt of Cadwyn agreed to a treacherous division of the spoils from Aedern's defeat, and Redania was left in disarray after the assassination of Vizimir. Some of the Brotherhood are now in Redania, or the neutral countries of Kovir and Hengfors. Vigilforts hasn't turned up since the events on Thanedd, but Francesca is now the queen of the free elves in Dol Blathanna, which was given to them by Emperor Emhyr. Sadly, it seems like Tissaia's decisions during the coup weighed too heavily on her conscience, and she therefore committed suicide. Now that Geralt is mostly recovered from his fight with Vigilforts, he and Dandelion decide to set off in search of Ciri, who is reportedly in the hands of Nilfgaard. Codringer and Fenn's killers kidnapped the decoy Ciri and handed her over to Emhyr, and now the Emperor is proclaiming to the world that he has the real Ciri and will possibly be marrying her. The real Ciri's whereabouts, and even Yennefer's, are unfortunately still unknown. Well, we made it back to Brokilon. Haven't been there since the Sword of Destiny book, Sword of Destiny short story. Dandelion, he's able to get in there without getting shot. If you remember, you can't go into Brokilon. And I said in the summer, he miraculously gets in there. It's actually a really big deal. So he does that without getting shot because he is singing and playing his lute as he is getting closer to entering, and the Dryads really like music. And if they like music, they're gonna like Dandelion because he is a very talented. I mean, say what you will about him. I know Geralt gives him a hard time a lot, but I don't think anybody would deny that he's a very talented musician. He's very famous for his musical talent. So he's able to get in that way. Honestly, it seems kind of easy, but I won't touch on that too much. But like last time, they're not exactly thrilled to have Geralt there. There's actually a point where Dandelion says the Dryads tolerate Geralt, and Geralt cuts him off to say, "You've chosen the right word." But that was interesting to me because I thought about how Triss was able to portal Geralt in there. Well, I mean, technically, yeah, Tissaia probably was the one that created the portal, but still, I think Triss went with Geralt. So, I mean, they probably didn't like it. I mean, they obviously were okay with it because Geralt's still alive, Triss is still alive. But I think, I just thought it was a little bit strange that they didn't get shot immediately upon entering. If they don't like people getting close to the forest, I can imagine that they'd probably get pretty upset if somebody were to just magically portal into there. But I don't know. They might even be also familiar with Triss. For all we know, it wouldn't really be that big of a shock if they were, because she's kind of a prominent sorceress. She was an advisor to a king, so it's possible she knew them too. And she had been there before. But still, I just thought that it was a little bit weird. And maybe that's why we weren't present for that scene when Triss and Geralt arrive in Brokilon, because maybe the author didn't want to flesh out how it was okay for him to do that. But anyway, Dandelion gives Geralt updates on the state of the world now that the war is kicked off. And as he tells the story, we actually get some up-close examples from very minor characters. So what happens is the scenes of Geralt and Dandelion. They're in the forest, and then it will cut to this example, this minor character, and then it cuts back to Geralt and Dandelion. So I just wanted to make sure I explained that at first, in case you didn't read the chapter. But I wanted to make sure I explain that up front before I start going into these individual scenes that we see. So the first one that we cut to is this Nilfgaardian Chamberlain. He is also a chief bailiff. His name's Peter Everston, and we see him after the battle for Aldersburg, where Nilfgaard severely defeated Aedirn and Lyria. So this guy, Peter Everston, is telling his subordinates these new orders. The previous orders were war to the castles, peace to the villages. So they're just going after the military, they're going after the higher up people, they're leaving the civilians alone. But now, the new orders is from tomorrow on, it's war to everything alive and everything that can burn. But they also want them to take all the resources they can before doing so, because they think in war, that's something that's probably necessary, is to have as many resources as you can get. So that is a pretty big deal. They are now just killing civilians. It is very horrendous. And what we see next is Nilfgaard. They laid siege to Vengerberg, which is Aedirn's capital, and the city fell. They killed everyone. And once word about this got out, the rest of Aedirn's civilians began to flee to Temeria and Redania so they could escape and not be slaughtered by the Nilfgaardian military. But many of these fugitives were pursued by Nilfgaardian troops so that they could be taken as slaves. So Aedirn's army ran away. They were so badly defeated, they just took off. And then there was nobody left to protect the fugitives except for this very small group led by this woman called Black Rayla. We actually have met this character before in chapter 2 in the bathhouse at the inn with Yen, Margarita, Tissaia, and Ciri. And she was actually doing some mission for Tissaia. She was there to give Tissaia an update on whatever that mission was. Never learned what that was. I don't think we will now because Tissaia is dead. Doesn't look like doesn't look like Black Rayla met a very good fate either. So she and her unit are trying to delay the Nilfgaardians from catching up with the fleeing civilians. And it ends up turning out to actually be Scoia'tael leading the way. So they have to fight these Scoia'tael, and they do manage to hold them off for a little bit, but I don't know exactly how successful they were in keeping them from getting to the civilians. We don't actually get an update there. I mean, I think Nilfgaard did take a decent amount of slaves, but I don't know if it was the ones that were only a little bit ahead of this group. But Black Rayla's unit, they all get killed. It seems like Black Rayla got killed herself too, but the scene cuts away before we get to find out exactly what happens to her. So it cuts away, goes back to Geralt and Dandelion, and Geralt is asking why Temeria, one of Aedirn's allies, didn't come to their aid. And this is because a Nilfgaardian envoy, so this actually cuts to the castle, the palace in Vizima. King Foltest is meeting with this Nilfgaardian envoy, and they agreed to sign a truce, which is seen as very contemptible. Temeria's now neutrality is contemptible. So it looked like they no longer have a chance at defeating Nilfgaard, so Emhyr offers to leave Temeria in peace if they agree not to help Aedirn. Aedirn looked like it was already a lost cause because King Eärvel of Verden swore fealty to Nilfgaard. And now Verden is a Nilfgaardian province, so Temeria can no longer rely on Verden's strongholds to protect their flank anymore. So from Foltest's perspective, if they were to go help out Aedirn, there was a good chance that they were going to get defeated too, because they didn't have the strongholds in Verden anymore. But I honestly think, and there's no way that we'll ever know because it didn't happen this way, but I do honestly think that Emhyr sent this envoy to try to get this neutrality out of Foltest, because I think there was actually a good chance that if, even with the whole thing with Verden swearing fealty to Nilfgaard, I think there was a good chance that Temeria joining with Aedirn could have defeated Nilfgaard. But like I said, we'll never know because it didn't happen that way. Really quick, before I move on to the next section of the chapter, there was this, in this scene in Vizima, there was this duke there, his name is Hereward, and the White Rose Knights who tried to drive Geralt out of Elendor in The Last Wish in the book, in those Voice of Reason sections of the chapters, they were in service of this Duke Hereward. And it's funny because they were actually referring to him as a prince. And Nenneke was like, no, he's not a prince. He's a duke. Like, no, I'm going to call him Duke. And it looks like all these years later, that title didn't end up sticking, the title of prince. So he's being referred to as a duke when they were kind of adamant about referring to him as a prince. Just thought that was funny. I really like when he adds in like these little things, like I don't even know if you're supposed to take this out of it, like, oh yeah, he's not being referred to as a prince, but I like that these very small characters get reintroduced in later books in such small ways. Like, it's a very insignificant thing, but it's still, like, if you catch it, it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of cool in that moment. So I always like to point that out. I think I've even mentioned this before, or I've explained why I pointed out before, so sorry if I sound like a broken record, but you're probably going to hear me pointing these things out again in upcoming chapters, because I'm not going to give any spoilers here. I'm not going to tell you any of the characters that we do see again that you wouldn't have expected to see again because they're so insignificant, but it does happen, so I'll probably point that out when it comes up. Moving on. When Geralt asked Dandelion about Cadwyn, why didn't Cadwyn help Aedirn? We see what unfolds from the perspective of these Cadweni soldiers receiving their orders. So they've been waiting around to find out what's going to happen. When are they going to war? When they're going to help out Aedirn and Lyria and try to defeat Nilfgaard. But they get these orders that they are not to engage the Nilfgaardian soldiers as they cross into Aedirn, because Cadwyn and Nilfgaard made a pact that they're going to leave each other in peace. They're going to leave each other alone. Cadwyn is not going to help their allies. And in exchange, they're going to give back, I say back because a long time ago, Cadwyn had this territory. They're going to give back Lormark to Cadwyn, which was, up until now, part of Aedirn. I think I just said that wrong. Let me try that again. Nilfgaard is going to give Lormark, which up till now was a part of Aedirn. They're going to give it to Cadwyn. A long, long time ago, it was a part of Cadwyn. So Hensel did this thing that everybody is seeing as extremely despicable, very treacherous. He is agreeing to this peace with Nilfgaard just so that he can get some of the spoils of their defeat. And it's really messed up, and he's going to go down in history known as this treacherous, despicable king. So, I mean, that's he did it to himself. You can't feel bad for the man, but that is how we find out what happened with the allies of Aedirn and Lyria, why they didn't help out. And also Redania, I mentioned this in the summary, they're just they're just very disorganized. I think it's just very chaotic in that country right now because their king, King Vizimir, was assassinated. Didn't get any updates on that, though. I don't know who it was. I mean, I'm sure it was somebody working for Nilfgaard. It would be pretty odd if it was anybody else, but yeah. They don't have a king at the moment. And we're not given any up-close examples of anything that's going on there. But we do know that Dijkstra is being carried around in like a big chair because his ankle got snapped by Geralt in the last chapter. So that sucks for Dijkstra, but I don't feel bad for him. All right, well, Geralt then asked Dandelion about the sorcerers. So we got the updates on the countries. Now we're getting to see what happened with the sorcerers. We only really see one sorceress, but we do hear a little bit about some of the other ones. So we find out about Francesca Findabair. We see her up close. She has become a queen, and in the scene that cuts to her, she's speaking with Filavandrel, who we of course met in the Edge of the World story. And Filavandrel wants her to expand their borders past Dol Blathanna, which was just given to them. But she refuses to try because she knows Emhyr isn't exactly a giving person. And it's honestly a really big deal that he gave them Dol Blathanna in the first place. And Filavandrel also wants Francesca to retrieve some of the Scoia'tael from the other countries so that they can come to Dol Blathanna and help protect their borders there. And also just to get them to stop fighting because they're dying. They're young elves. They can't have them dying out because the whole elven race is going to go extinct if they can't reproduce with these younger elves. And Francesca says that she agreed with Emhyr to publicly condemn the squirrels, which isn't something she wanted to do. It's not something not something Filavandrel wants to hear. But she did this because Foltest and Henselt agreed to let the free elves have Dol Blathanna as long as they do condemn the squirrels. She also says that Emhyr wants the squirrels to keep fighting in order to disrupt the Northern Kingdom's war preparations. So because these young elves are dying, it's really in their best interest to stop fighting, to put an end to everything that they've been doing with the whole Scoia'tael movement. But it probably isn't going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately. And you're hearing that they should do it from Filavandrel, who's very old, who's very wise. And if you hear it from him, then it's probably I am willing to believe that is what is in their best interest. But unfortunately, it's not looking good for them. It's not looking good for a lot of people right now, except for Emperor Emhyr. Let's talk about that. So we are brought back from the Francesca scene, we're brought back to Brokilon with Dandelion and Geralt, and there are these Scoia'tael fugitives that are arriving in Brokilon. Geralt goes and talks to them. We don't get to witness what is said in that conversation, but it seems like they updated him on the news that Ciri is in Nilfgaard. So Dandelion has heard this too before he got to Brokilon. And Geralt decides he's got to leave and he's got to go and try and save her. Dandelion decides he's going to join his friend. And he's going to tell him along the way the details of what he has heard about Ciri in Nilfgaard. So we learn at the very end of the chapter that the Ciri that is there in Nilfgaard is a decoy. And nobody past Emhyr and other Nilfgaardian higher-ups, probably just no more than the two guys that were present, I'll talk about that in a second, I don't think anybody else knows. So Geralt is going to try to save Ciri, and it's not even the real one. For all we know, he could be heading in the complete opposite direction. I know Nilfgaard's really far south, and Thanedd is somewhere near or within like the northern countries. I don't know exactly which country, but she might still be somewhere not that far from Thanedd. But we don't know. We don't know anything about where Ciri is. She could just be dead. Hopefully not, but that's a possibility. Anyway, Geralt could be going to Nilfgaard and she could not be there, and he's wasting a lot of time trying to get there. But anyway, we don't get to see any more of Geralt and Dandelion in the chapter after it cuts to Loch Grim, Emhyr's summer palace. And in this scene, Emhyr gets announced into the throne room, and then that's followed by the fake Ciri being announced into the throne room. And he declares in front of everyone that he will return her royal titles to her, that she will be safe in Nilfgaard, and that he's endowing her with the title of Duchess of Rohan, and he's going to send her to temporarily live in the castle of Darn Rohan. And Darn Rohan is very, very far away. So he's doing this so that he doesn't have to see her. He doesn't have to court her. And speaking of courting her, just wanted to say really quickly, and this might not even be that important, but he never mentions that he's planning to marry her. This is just said by the nobles who were present in the throne room, and they're talking about it before Emhyr enters. So it's kind of just them theorizing, but they honestly are probably correct, since Emhyr sent away his mistress. He had this woman that was supposed to be very beautiful that he was having this affair with for years. He sent her away, and it would be in his advantage, politically speaking, if he married Ciri. So yeah, he's got this fake Ciri. At this point in the chapter, we don't know that, but because we do know that by the time the chapter is over. Something that I was wondering is, what does Emhyr think he's gonna do if the real Ciri does turn up? Like, let's say Redania or Cadwyn gets a hold of the real Ciri. I don't know what his backup plan would be there. But then again, when you think about it, this isn't a world where they have technology, like there's no TV, there's no internet. I don't really know how they could prove that the Ciri they have is real, like if that were to happen. But it could really just be, his word against theirs. He could say, oh, the Ciri they have is an imposter. The one I have is the real Ciri. I don't know. But that was one thing that I came out of this chapter not totally sure on what he would be doing. There's a few other things. I'm going to talk about them here in a minute. But yeah, that one, I don't know. He's not a dumb man. You can say what you want about Emhyr, but he's definitely smart and strategic. So he's got to have some backup plan, but he doesn't share it with us, so we don't know. So later, Emhyr meets privately with the chief of military intelligence, Vattier de Rideau, and this coroner, Stefan Skellen, who's also known as Tawniel, and an astrologer, Zarthesius. So Emhyr orders Zarthesius to look for the real Ciri, never saying exactly who it is that he wants him to find, but we know that it's the real Ciri he wants him to locate. And to help with finding her, he tells this astrologer that he will provide him with her hair. How in the world does he have some of Ciri's hair? I don't even know what else to say about that. It's just how. So he sends the astrologer, Zarthesius, he sends him away. And then he orders Vattier to arrest and torture Rience and Cahir. So Rience and Cahir, I did say this about Cahir, but Rience is now included in this too. They're in the doghouse. They are not going to meet a very good fate if Nilfgaardians get their hands on them, because they do have to actually find them first. Emhyr doesn't know where they are, but he's sending one of his top people to go locate them and then torture them. So you wouldn't want to be those guys right now, but I mean, it's another person. I'm not going to show any sympathy for them. So he then orders Tawniel to find Vigilfortz's hideout and kill him. I don't know why he's so sure Vigilfortz is alive if nobody's heard or seen him since Thaned. I don't get that. But then Emhyr reveals, this is the very end of the chapter, he reveals that the Ciri that he's been sent is an imposter. He knows it's not the real one. This is another thing I don't get. How does he know it's not the real one? I don't know how he knows that. He's a smart guy, I've said it. I just don't know how he could be so sure. It's pretty strange. All right, so I've got my closing thoughts here. First thing I wanted to talk about, my closing thoughts was, aside from having the real Ciri, things seem to be working out really well for Emhyr, and things are going extremely poorly for the northern leaders. So aside from losing the war that they wanted to restart, they also, I mean, it's not true, but they are believing that Emhyr has Ciri, which was a huge priority for them to prevent from happening. So yeah, things are not going their way one bit. Vigilfortz and Ciri, they are both missing. So we got updates on no updates since what happened on Thaned. He followed her into that tower, and then the tower got destroyed. So they could both just be dead. a lot of people seem to believe that that's not the case. I mean, I know with Ciri, a lot of people are just, they're going to think that she's alive because there's this decoy Ciri. But with Vigilfords, why do they think he's still alive? Even when Dandelion mentions it to Geralt, it's just like, oh yeah, no one's seen from him. But nobody thinks that he would be dead when the tower that he went into got destroyed. I don't know. Also, I was thinking with Yen, maybe she followed them in there, and that's why she hasn't turned up yet. I'm not saying that could be totally false. A lot of different things could have happened to Yen, but that was just one little thing that I thought of was a possibility because nobody's heard from her. Don't know what's going on with Yen. Hopefully she's alive, just like we hope Ciri is alive. You know what would be great is if Ciri and Yennefer are still alive and Vigilfords died. I don't think we'll be that lucky, though. Last thing is that this war is fully in motion. It got kicked off in the last chapter. It's in full swing right now. I don't think Emhyr is going to stop with Aedirn, Lyria, and Rivia. I think he's probably going to keep on going. He is supposed to not get involved with Temeria and Cadwyn, but I would not put it past this man to try and invade those countries at some point soon. And then also Redania. He didn't seem to have signed any treaties or any truces with Redania, and they are in complete disarray right now with Vizimir's assassination. They don't have a king at the moment. So this would actually be the perfect time for them. If they wanted to invade Redania, I think it would be really easy for them at this moment. So I don't know. Maybe we'll find out about that in the next chapter. But yeah, we got a lot of answers in this book. And now we're back to getting a lot more questions. There's just a lot of uncertainty at the moment. But hopefully we'll get at least a couple of answers in the next chapter. Well, that is all I have for you. Just to let you know, in case you didn't, these episodes are available on YouTube with video, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts with just the audio. Thank you so much for joining, and I will catch you all in the next episode.